Hello everyone, this is Paul the Oaken Knight coming to you today with a play demonstration of Traces of War, a game released by Vuca Simulations. Actually the first one of these I've ever played, so I thought it was high time that I got one of these to the table, and designed by one of my favorite designers, Tetsuya Nakamura. According to the company's introduction to the game, Traces of War is a two-player game that simulates the intense fighting between Axis and Soviet forces after the Battle of Kursk during August 1943 to March 1944. A major Soviet offensive is launched against a German mobile defense. Will the breakthrough be successful? Well, we'll take a look at it. Typical of games designed by Tetsuya, the game's complexity comes in at 4 out of 10, according to the company, and solitaire rated at 9 out of 10. And from what I see here and from my own playthrough before launching this video, these numbers are pretty much spot on, I think. Complexity is low end of medium. The rules come in at about 12 pages. Yes, only 12 pages. So it's not hard to learn. The counters come individually mounted in their sprues. They pop out with rounded corners and so forth. So you have no issue with corner clipping and all that good stuff. You can be playing this game the same day that you open the box. So all that counts in favor of Traces of War. So many games these days come at you with 50 pages, 60 pages. I've seen 100-page rule books. That's tough. But this one is a game that you will actually can pick up and play. Counters are a 5/8 inch square. For most of them, there's a little over 300 counters in the game, plus some round 3/4 inch counters. So it's very easy to deal with the counters on the map. And the map itself is slightly larger than a single panel map typical from GMT. It has two map panels. They are on paper, they're not hard bound. However, each individual one is slightly smaller than a standard map. So when you put them together, it's like 40 inches by 28 inches, something that I think most gamers can fit on one tabletop or another. When I first looked at the map, I thought it was kind of unusual because first thing that strikes you is there's really not a whole lot of color on this map. And what color is there tends to be kind of faded and almost a little in the background. When I thought about it a little bit, I was just wondering, what kind of maps did they actually use during the war? If you were in the Russian army in 1943, they're not going to be giving you these elaborate multicolored maps. They're going to give you something functional, like most Soviet gear, but that does not have all the bells and whistles that you might otherwise have. So I went online and did a little research with Google and found that, yep, that's exactly what this is. This map is very much in the style of the maps that were actually used by the Soviets in the Second World War. The symbology and so forth is pretty much right what you'd expect to see after you look at some historical maps. If anything, the map in the game is perhaps just a little bit too sparse. I noticed in the period maps, they tended to use a kind of a green tint wherever there was forested or in the game terms might be considered rough terrain. And here they don't do that. And second, on this map, clear terrain isn't just one graphic style. There are some hexes that are clear, some have a few design things in them, and all the way up to something that looks like there's a whole lot of ridges and things on it, but is still considered clear terrain in this game. Rivers are of two types. There's a major river and a minor river. They're a little hard to tell apart until you play through the game once, and then it gets easier. Basically, you have to realize that if you've heard of the river before, it's probably a major river, and if you've never heard of it before, it's probably a minor river, and it really works out that way. There are 4 major rivers, and the rest are tributaries to those rivers. Play proceeds in 8 turns, each turn representing 1 month, but this is a chit pull game, and so there's a fair amount to do in any one turn. There are several chits that are in the cup to compose a single turn. Alrighty, what I want to do now is to go ahead and simply start play and go through how the game works as we actually do stuff. So, without further ado, let's get it started. Here is a view of the front beginning up by Rostov and by going down along the Dnieper River. And here's Kharkov, the river terminating about here. Okay, And then we have rough terrain and some clear terrain as we continue to the east. Each side is organized around 4 different Army headquarters. Units are not specifically attached to any headquarters. Any unit that is within range of the headquarters when the headquarters is activated will become activated itself. And units can be activated by more than once in a turn and even by more than one headquarters within a turn as chits are pulled out of the cup. The first phase that we have to deal with would be the Luftwaffe reorganization phase, but on turn 1 there is no need to do that. In fact, that we won't have to do probably for a while yet. The game has multiple crossing points as they go from one major river to the next, and in particular at the Dnieper River there are 6 crossing points. And later on, the Soviets will have an airdrop that they can perform, which would make a 7th crossing point. As crossing points are captured, the Germans begin to react more and more strenuously. And one of the first things that happens is that you start having the remnants of the Luftwaffe begin to show up. So until we have something actually captured as far as crossing the Dnieper River, there won't be any Luftwaffe. Now, one of the interesting things that Tetsuya put into this game is that there are about 7 cities marked with these. This is the Supreme Command marker. You can guess where that came from, and it's under orders not to be given up. So it's kind of the no retreat order. Unlike anywhere else on the map, retreats for defenders within one of these Supreme Command ordered cities are taken as step losses rather than hexes to be retreated. And if the Soviets ever actually take over one of these cities while the Supreme Command order is in place, the Axis loses. The Germans lose immediately, right then, right there. There is a process to get rid of these markers as the game progresses, and so we will cover that when we get there. But for now, we do have a few of these fairly close to the front that the Germans actually have to pay attention to. The next phase of every game turn is to go ahead and select the chits that are going to be placed in the draw cup. However, on turn 1 and turn 1 only, there is a special phase where the Soviets get to designate one front headquarters that they are going to activate, but the activation will be limited to attack only. And so I think it makes most sense to go down here in the south. The terrain is the easiest and the concentration of Soviet units is the highest. So I will go ahead and figure out some combat odds and walk through the process of actually performing an attack. I'm going to select this front headquarters that's farthest to the south. We have the best concentration of units here. Every headquarters has a range of 6 as far as activating. The colors on the counters are there to help with setup only. They don't really have any permanent organizational impact on the play of the game. So like these have a black, their unit IDs in black, others have gold, others some have kind of a bluish color. That only matters for helping you set up the counters on the map, also helping you set up. The reverse of the counter has the actual hex number that it's going to be set up in, and also printed on the map, kind of ghosted out as the ID of the unit. So you have lots of ways to figure out how to set up. So we count 6 hexes out from the headquarters. We get out to where the green markers are, and everything in there is now active. Normally we could move, but this first turn rule only, this special phase to start the game, allows us only to attack. So I'm going to calculate some odds and talk about that in a sec. So what I've done is combine units to make 3 attacks. We have stacks of 2 all the way down the line for the Soviets. Stacking in this game is 2 combat units plus 1 headquarters. Well, each of these is stacked with 2 with 1 German defender. Some of these units, like this guy, is in these slash marks here are rough terrain. Again, I would have preferred to have some kind of forest representation and a green tint to it, like on the actual maps that the Soviets used, but we got what we got. So we got a 4-to-1, these 2 combined to a 6-to-1, these 2 combined to a 5-to-1 with the 1 shift adjustment due to rough terrain. For players' 8 cards, they actually mounted on the same material that they used for the unit counter. So this is more of a player board than a player aid. And we can see the combat results table. At first glance, it's push oriented, but because of the effect of zones of control, if you have to retreat through a zone of control, you take a step loss for every hex you retreat through. So A1 would be like attacker loses 1 step, attacker loses 2 steps. R is defender retreats 1 hex. RR is defender retreats 2. Say a 2RR, that's defender takes 2 step losses and retreats 2 hexes, and so forth. So I'm actually going to roll some dice for you, and we will go ahead and take care of this combat one by one. Let's start with the 4-1, which is this guy here. I roll a 5, 4-1, 5 is an RR result. So, this guy goes back 2, there's no problem with that. Attackers do get to advance 1 or 2 hexes. Now, unless we're dealing with major rivers, which have their own set of rules to monkey things up for the attacker, units can advance either 1 or 2 hexes. The first hex has to be the vacated hex. Only armored or mech infantry can advance 2. Leg infantry only gets to advance 1 hex. And you see here we have tanks, and I think it might be regular leg infantry underneath. I'll go ahead and do the advance here, and you'll see. And while we could have advanced the armor 2 hexes, I opted not to because there's a lot of German armor in the area. And I don't want to start losing Russian armor right on the very first turn of the game. So we've got the infantry left behind, the armor advanced into the breach, which also is a rough hex. So if they are attacked, it will get 1 shift to the left. With 2 armored units there, they feel pretty secure. Alrighty, 6-1. Roll to 5. Good roll, 1 RR. Alrighty, so this guy is going to take 1 step loss and retreat 2. He was a 3-point infantry. By the way, you know, it's pretty simple stuff as far as what's on the counters. You got the strength of the unit, the 5 is the movement rate. Germans generally move faster than the Russians. And these 2 little boxes here in the corner say there's 2 steps on the unit. This guy took a loss. Now there's only 1 step, and he's a 2-point unit instead of 1. And they also have that horizontal stripe going through the unit east-west to show that it is now a reduced unit. 2 hexes back. I think that's good. And we will do a similar advance to what we did in the other hex. We're simply going to move up the armor into the breach and have the infantry stay behind, keeping lines of supply open to the armor. We'll get into supply later. And finally, we have a 5-1 to do the final attack. Rolling pretty good. 5-1 is a 4. That is an RR. Alrighty. Now, taking a look at the Zoks, the only hex that does not have a Zok, a Russian Zok in it, is this one. So that is where they, by rule, they have to go. And so we're going to go back 2 hexes. RR, no losses. He's just going to go here. And once again, actually, I think we can advance the infantry along with the armor like this. And so I expect the going to be fairly methodical in the beginning, and as time goes on, the Germans start getting thinner and the Russians start getting more of them, and it starts accelerating as things go until we hit the next major river line. Then it's a whole different game. Alrighty, so that is the special attack phase. Now, the next step in the sequence would be to go ahead and populate the cup for turn 1. So these are the markers for the Soviets, with the exception of the supply marker, which is actually a shared marker. The supply marker is always placed in the cup, and unit supply is checked when it is drawn. So there's not a supply phase per se. You don't know when you're going to check supply within the turn. It happens when this counter is pulled. So this guy, he goes in the cup. This is the Soviet reinforcement marker. Soviets get reinforcements when the reinforcement marker is pulled. There are 6 different tiers of reinforcements that come into the game. And so prior to any having been drawn, when you draw the first one, the first tier of reinforcements come in the game. And it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 units will come into the game. So we can put that in, we cannot put that in. It's up to us. The Soviets get to put in 6 counters into the cup throughout the whole game. And they do it up front as part of their selection. They have to pick one of each of the 4 fronts. So here's the 4 front headquarters. They each have 2 markers, but they're required to put in one at a minimum for each. So there's these 4 will go in the cup. So we're left with the decision to double up, have more than one activation for one or more of the fronts, or have a double activation for one front and put the reinforcements in. We want the reinforcements. And I would say the guys we just attacked with are the most logical to go ahead and put in the cup. So here you can see it is the whatever it is, first Ukrainian front. That's going to be in the cup. And then the actual headquarters, just so you get a good look at it, is this guy. Again, he can stack with 1 or 2 regular ground units for the Soviets. Same thing with the Germans. Stacking limits 2 plus 1 headquarters. The 6 is his command radius. All the headquarters have radius 6. 1 is his defense rating, and 4 is his movement rate. And you will quickly find out that 4 for a movement rate is kind of limiting. They want to stay at or near the roads once things get rolling. Otherwise, the headquarters could start being a limiting factor. Now, there's an optional rule to upgrade the headquarters, and mainly what it does, it increases the combat capability to 2 and the movement rate to 6. But that's an optional rule, one of only 2 optional rules, and right now, just getting to know the game, I'm not using any optional rules. All right, so the Soviets have populated the cup with their markers, and these 3 units, these 3 markers are not going to be in the cup this turn. They get placed aside until a subsequent turn. This player aid board is included to help solitaire players specifically. All of what you see here is printed on the map, but so that solitaire players don't have to be running around the map to manipulate the various counters, they give you this kind of an all-in-one place to put all your stuff. So for today's play demo, I'm going to go ahead and use this. 8 turns in the game, we're on turn 1. The markers that we did not select are sitting over here in inactive. Let's take a look at the Germans. The Germans have a total of 6 markers in the game, and they are of 2 types. Each of the, in this case, the army headquarters for the Germans has their own activation marker, and there are 4 headquarters, and so there are 4 markers. And then there's the OKH, or the higher headquarters, and there are 2 of those. Now, OKH is special. First off, we don't have that on turn 1, so that's not going to be in the cup. But unlike the Soviets, the Germans have the option of withholding activation markers from the cup, so they can hold back and introduce them to the cup as the turn progresses. So at the top of every activation segment, they can go ahead and throw 1 or more of them in the cup if they so choose. In addition, if they are holding an OKH counter in their hand, unallocated but active, they can go ahead and issue a preemptory activation after the marker has been pulled from the cup for the turn. So let's say the Soviets pull something out of the cup that you don't like, you can use the OKH to preempt it. It goes back in the cup, and you get to do something as the German player. And that something can be, first, you can activate a army headquarters, just the same as if you had pulled out one of the activation markers, and you can activate any of them. Second, you can go ahead and just activate a number of units. They can be scattered about the map, and you can activate them at your pleasure. The number you get to activate is going to depend on how many crossings have been put in place. The more of them there are, the more panicky OKH is getting, and the more units you will get to activate if you use the OKH to activate individual units rather than a single formation. Third, and also critical, is negotiations. So this basically represents you as the on-site German commander negotiating with you-know-who to get rid of these order counters. To get rid of one of those counters takes 3 points. You get a certain number of points whenever you go this route. In the beginning, when the Soviets do not own any of these crossover points, you only get 3. So the only thing you can do is remove one of these order counters. However, these same points can bring in reinforcements. German reinforcements cost 1 for an infantry unit, which are the same as the ones that are already out here on the map, or 2 for an armored unit that vary a little bit in quality. So you get to bring in armor for 2 points, an infantry for 1 point, or an Axis ally for a half a point. You only get to do that, however, when you pull OKH out of the cup, which means if you hang on to it so that you get to issue a preemptory order, that's fine, but you cannot use an OKH that is not in the cup to do reinforcements or to negotiate with you-know-who. So you have a choice to throw those in the cup or keep them out of the cup. Unfortunately for the Germans, they don't get these on turn 1. They get to select 3 activation markers on turn 1. It does increase, it goes to 4 and then it goes to 5, okay? So they get to pick 3. And the OKHs aren't there yet, they come on turn 2. And so I'm going to select these 3 guys, which not coincidentally are the first 3 in line going up and down the map. So the guys over here do not have their headquarters in the map. I only get to pick 3, had to make a call. That's the call. But unlike the Soviet, the German is not required to put these in the cup. Remember, he can go ahead and put them in as the turn progresses. And so he's kind of the counterpuncher, okay? And so we're going to go ahead and let the Soviets try to do whatever the heck they're going to do first. And we're not going to put any in the cup. So these 3 counters are going to be set aside, eligible to be used during the turn. And the winner is, I don't know what that top line is, but it's the second Ukrainian in my world because I can pronounce it. And so they are actually the second up in the line. They go 1, 2, 3, 4. These guys activated earlier. Now it's these guys. That's the headquarters right here. This unit is now currently active. And I'm going to count out 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the units on or in between the green markers are going to be the active units for this action phase. When you activate units, the first thing you do is to move them. Nothing here moved. I've gone ahead and cocked the guys to show that they have, quote, moved, even though they didn't really move. The only thing that moved is the headquarters. I moved that up closer. Now, everybody was within 6, of course, but if I get closer, I'll be able to pull in more units with the next activation. So even though they kind of look like they're in that first Ukraine group, well, they are, but they also could be in the second. So depending on which counter's drawn, you could have these guys activated in a couple different ways. And they can activate as often as their counters get pulled. There's no limit on that. As for the attack, I think there's only one attack here that makes any sense at all, and it's not a great one. We have 9 points here. It's going over a major river. Major, minor at this point doesn't matter. They're halved. All fractions dropped. You basically total up all the guys that are attacking that are going to be halved, and then you have that number. So 5 plus 4 is 9, and then it goes to 4. Okay. These two, we got a 4-pointer and a 3-pointer. 3, 4, that's attack defense. So we got 7 points here, plus is the 4 coming over the river. These guys are not halved because they're not going over the river. So that's 11 points on a 3-point defender. One short of where you want to be. That would be a 3-to-1, except it's going into rough terrain. Life just keeps giving, right? 4, so it would be a 3-to-1, shift 1 to the left. We're rolling for a 2-to-1 on this attack. A 1! Well, isn't that just jolly? So the Soviets lose a step. We'll take it off of this guy. Ouch! That's no way to start a war. And this chit pull is done. So I clean up the counters. I'm not going to show you after this, but then I just uncockify guys, get them back into their regular orientation for the next time they activate, and they are done. So now I pull the next counter out of the cup. And I pulled the first Ukrainian out of the cup. These are the same guys that activated with that free attack. So this are the guys way at the south end of the map, right next to the guys who just activated. So the headquarters is here. I count out 6. Note that nothing interferes with this radius of activation, the command radius of the headquarters. Not enemy units, not enemy unit Zocs, not terrain, except for impassable hexes. So you just count out 6. You don't have to worry about anything other than that. And of course it goes out here, but we just have 1 unit out there. So this whole cluster of units is now active, and they will begin with a move. Let's talk about zones of control for a second, now that we got movement. Zones of control are permeable. You can move through zones of control, and you do not necessarily have to stop when you enter a zone of control. Although especially the Soviets, they will probably not have enough movement points to continue the move. Why is that? It costs 2 extra movement points just to enter the Zoc, so 2 plus cost of terrain. And then to go Zoc to Zoc, so like somewhere like here, where we have an opening between 2 units, so there's all kind of Zocs all over here. To move from here to here, you are entering a Zoc and you are leaving a Zoc. Leaving the Zoc also costs 2, so it would be 2 to exit, 2 to enter, plus cost of terrain. So the minimum cost for motoring through a zone of control is 5. Notice that Soviet infantry only has 4 movement points, so they aren't doing this. Notice that German infantry have 5 movement points. They can do it. And likewise, the German armor is like a movement of 10, which they can have all kind of fun. The Soviet armor has 6, and their mecha infantry has 6 movement points. So, for example, if I move from here to here, that's going to be 2 to exit, 2 to enter, plus 1 for the rough hex that costs 1 to enter. That would be 5 if we wanted to do that. So most units didn't move. I did not push these tanks any farther forward. I'm respecting all these armored units the Germans have in the area. Here we got, I think it's 16 points, 4 4s against a 3-point unit. So that's going to be 5 to 1, and he is in the clear. So it stays 5 to 1. Over here we got 4 to 1 against a German armored unit who is in rough terrain. So with the detriment shift, that's going to be 4 to 1. Notice that he's got Zocs all around him, and for this purpose, the friendly unit does not negate the Soviet Zoc. So if this guy retreats, he's going to be taking a step loss for every zone of control hex that he walks into. And this one likewise has got Zocs all around him. I put the red dice there to signify that you add 6. Maximum odds are 10 to 1. So the red 4 means it's 10 to 1. 6 because it's red, and 4 more makes it 10. All right, let's try this 5 to 1. I rolled a 6. I'm doing pretty well on the die rolls today. Hey, 6 on 5 to 1 is 1 RR. So the defender will take 1 step loss and retreat 2. And the attacker will go advance 1 or 2, 2 if he's mech or armored, and we do have 1 in there. Question is, do we want to put that unit at risk by stretching out? He could maybe get a 3 to 1 on him. But yes, it's also the question of Zocs, and if he got called on to retreat, he would take step losses. No, thank you. So we're just going to advance an infantry and a mech into the hex. Don't want a lot of casualties at this point. Alrighty, next we got a 4 to 1. 6, oh my goodness. 6, 4, 1 RR. Well, guess what? All right, this armored unit takes a hit from the 1, and he has to retreat through Zocs. So he dies. It's our first casualty is the 11th Panzer. Ooh-ah. In the 8-turn game, victory points are a lot of it is for killing things. So infantry is 1 point and armor is 2 points. And then there's points for taking major cities. And if you look on the edge of the map, there's these tan kind of areas like over here and over here. Units get over there, and I think it's 5 points each to get there. So it's basically breakthrough. If the Soviets have a breakthrough and they get all the way to the map edge, they get points for that too. They need to get 65 points to win, and there's no variance in the victory conditions. Either they get the 65 and they win, or they don't and they lose. Oh, then we get to advance. So first hex has to be the vacated hex. We'll just, well, go here. And that is a rough terrain hex. All right, we will dice this. So the mech will go ahead and go 2. Zones of control are not relevant to these advances. However, major rivers do have an impact. Once we get there, well, I don't think we'll get that far, but they will stop the advance, generally speaking. In this game, getting across a major river is not a small deal. You basically, if there's Zocs on both sides of the river, if the enemy has Zocs on both sides of the river, you can't cross it. You can attack over it, but when you get to the other side, unless you got supply coming from somewhere up or down river where there's a bridge that's been taken, you're going to be out of supply. So the main places that you're going to go after are the bridge crossing points on the major river, which sounds correct historically, and it's hard. So, yes, you'll do it, but it's hard. It will definitely be a speed bump. All right, and we've got one left. We got a 10 to 1. Remember, I use the red dice when it's going to be add 6 to whatever that is. So it's 10 to 1. And it's going to, oh, Jesus, another 6. All right, so this guy blows up real good. That's our second casualty. So he blowed up real good. And we're going to advance. In this case, the armor. We have a mech and an armor unit that are going to go there. And then, since they can combine, the infantry is going to go into the vacated hex. So this worked out really well. And so you can see the Soviets are now starting to cause problems getting zones of control around units, making them very vulnerable to taking step losses. In fact, we got these 2 in a bag. We got 3 units in a bag right now. So I think the Germans are going to want to put this headquarters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're going to want to put the 8th Army headquarters is going to go into the cup, and the Germans are going to hopefully pull that before more Russians jump on these guys. So they go into their stash of units that they did not put on the map. So for the start of the next action segment, the Germans are going to take this from their activation marker stash and go ahead and put it in the cup, and they're going to hope that it gets pulled before the Russians actually do some more damage. And so now the next headquarters down the line, the Soviet 3rd Ukrainian Front is now active, which is going to be around here. So moving one more headquarters up the line, the 3rd is located here. And they count out their 6 hexes. Remember, you don't count enemy units, zones of control, none of that. Just a radius of 6. So everything in this whole pocket of units is now active. So I will go ahead and do the movements. Not many units here, but we'll see what we can do. One note, this being a major river, through this whole, the throw area, they're attacking across a major river. Even though that looks like if you had the movement points, you could just go over there, you can't, because the Germans have zones of control on both sides of that river hex side. When one side has zones of control on both sides of a major river hex side, you may not cross it. In fact, if it's in the reverse, you may not even retreat across it. It is a major obstacle. Okay. Likewise, this hex, the Russians can't go across. They got to fight their way across this river or flank it, but in this position, they're going to have to fight their way, and they don't have a lot of units yet. They want that reinforcement counter in the worst way. But this is the way the things came out of the cup. This is what they have to deal with. So I went ahead and selected two places to attack. Now again, this is going over a major river. Everybody's going to be halved going in there. You total up all the attack factors, and then you have that number drop the fractions. I chose these two partly because there's three hexes that can attack. Some number of guys could get there, but also there's a bridge. There's a bridge going from here to here, and there's a bridge going from there to there. We get across that bridge, we're going to be in supply. We'll make sure we are in supply, and then we can start leveraging that bridgehead next time these guys activate. So, but first they got to get over. So we got a 3-to-1. Certainly not a sure thing. 2 chances in 3 of working. And of course, there goes the luck right out the window. Roll a 2. Nothing happens. It's a dash. All right, the 4-to-1. What can you do? 6. Well, that's something. That's 1 RR. All righty. So this guy takes a hit. He's going back 2. I'm going to have this 5-point unit cross the bridge, and he's got this armor unit back here making sure that we're going to be in supply. When this guy's zone of control traces over the river, he'll be going through a guy, which will negate the Zok for purposes of getting supply over the bridgehead. If I advance both of them, it would be an empty hex, and he would cut the supplies to the bridgehead. So we didn't want that. And that's all I'm going to do. I didn't even move up the headquarters. He's just going to have the same control span as he did this time that he activated. And at this point, I'm going to have the Germans throw the 4th Panzer Army, which was in their reserve activations. And this is going to get thrown into the cup for future selection. We still have the other end of the line by Rostov. Neither side is activated there. The Germans don't want to put that army in because they want to let the Russians go first. And then they can react to it depending on what happens. The Soviets have their first bridgehead over this major river they're right up against. This is the Donets. And the second thing you want you to notice is that these activations really don't take too long to do. You're really not moving around that many units. Because of the high cost of entering and leaving a zone of control and the relatively low movement points that the Soviet units have, they're not going to be moving around that much once they make contact. It's going to be more fine-tuning or moving up guys that are not in contact from basically a reserve position and getting them forward. Activations don't necessarily have to take a long time. That's why this game, according to the publisher, can be played in 6 hours. You know, I might take a little bit longer, but yeah, I can see roughly an hour a turn when I'm not doing a recording session. And the Soviets get their reinforcements, so let's talk about that. The Soviet reinforcements are all arranged here on this corner of the map. And if you look, you see 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. These do not refer to turn numbers. They refer to how many times the reinforcement counter has been drawn. So this being the first time it's been drawn, the Soviets get these 2 rows. Everything in this first bucket is going to come in. The way they come in is that they come in on railroads, but unlike a lot of games, most games, you don't count out where they end up. You simply plop them down on a connected rail line. As long as the rail line does not go into a Zok, enemy Zok, does not hit an enemy unit, or does not enter a major city that's controlled by the Germans, these Russian units can just kind of go down as far as they want. Realistically, that means they stop just short of the front line, and they can go anywhere one of these rail lines is represented on the map. So I ran guys down the rail line. I put the strongest and possibly the most up here. We want to be strong here. This is where we have our best attacking chance to make some progress quickly. I put 2 armor units here. I put guards, infantry here, 2 each. I reinforced here with a couple infantry units, here with a couple infantry units, and one down here for good measure. So I didn't put anything up here. Right now, I just don't think that's going to, I don't think a lot's going to happen over there. I want to push where the pushing is good. And the next counter is the supply counter. This counts for both sides. We check for supply status for all the units on the map. And I can tell from looking at it, everybody is in supply. But let's talk about why they're in supply. Right here, we have two German units that have zones of control behind them. So are they out of supply? And the answer is no, they're not out of supply because there's German units right behind them in the same hexes where the Zocs would be cutting them off. The fact that there's a unit there supersedes the fact that there is an enemy Zoc present. Likewise, this Soviet unit is in supply even though there's Zocs behind it because there's Russian units. There's Soviet units there and they are in supply. Now, the effect of being out of supply, the first turn, you put the marker down, and the effect of the out of supply marker on the units, they lose 2 attack points should they attack anybody. If it happens again the following turn, they lose 2 defense points in addition, as well as having their movement halved. And after that, that's it. Units are not eliminated for lack of supply in this game. And we have the German 4th Panzer Army. And the 4th Panzer Army are these guys down here that have been taking the brunt of the Soviet attacks. We just traced the 6 hexes, ignoring enemy units, ignoring Zocs, and so we get out to here, but not out to here. These guys are kind of stuck. This guy in particular, he's going to feel lonely here in a minute. It is the Germans' move, and I think they have to extricate 2 armored units, at least get them so that they're not going to have Zocs behind them. And so I mostly stabilized the line. I was able to pull the armor out of here, pull the guy out of here. It's not strong. We got a weak guy here, but he is there. This is a problem. That is a real squishy part down there. We've got Soviet armor down there. It doesn't help any. We got to be a little careful there. That's the best we could do right now. Alrighty. So anyway, they pulled back, no attacks. The Germans rarely attack in this game, let's be honest. They're here to be a speed bump and a punching bag. That's what they do, that's what they're good at. Yes, they might get some very localized attacks later, but this is really almost a pure defensive scenario for the Germans. So the Soviet 4th Ukrainian Front has activated. These are the guys that are down by Rostov. And the Germans have been holding off committing their activation marker in that sector to see what they were going to do. Well, let's see what they're going to do. So here's our headquarters, and our span of control goes out this far. Soviets are a little light on units here. I did not put anything new here, so there'll be little, if anything, going on. So I can only see one attack that has a chance of success. The good news is that he's going across a minor river, and let's talk about that a second. This is the Donets River. This is the major river running in between these lines. What's over here is actually downstream from the Donets going into the Sea of Azov, and it is not a major river. So what that means, you still have going across it, but you don't have the supply problems that you do across a major river. You can actually cross at a non-bridge and hope to tell the tale. And in this case, it is a bridge, and it's only a 2-point German unit there, so it's a kind of a sickly German infantry unit in clear terrain across the minor river. Even Have were able to get the 8 points required for a 4-1. 6, boy. And the 6 results in a 2 RR, so that guy is dead and buried, and the Soviets are going to advance. So the Soviets did a conservative advance, getting across the river. This is a minor city or village here, so they will get a shift next time when we attack them, but we got guys over the river. They will attack at full strength. Playing real honest here, the Germans have some of the best panzer divisions in the German army over here, including Das Reich and the Totenkopf division, as well as, what is it, the 23rd Panzer Division and the 1st Grenadier Division. They got some good guys over here. So we don't want to tempt fate by spreading ourselves out. Let's go ahead and put the last token in the cup for the Germans. This would be the 1st Panzer Army. And we have picked the 1st Ukrainian Front. So that's going to be, well, the guys that are the biggest threat right now. Lucky us. And so the 1st Ukrainian is located here. There's the headquarters. We traced out 6 hexes to pull in all the guys we are going to be activating. Notice that the 2nd Ukrainian front is now overlapping the 1st. So these guys kind of over in this area are going to go ahead and be activated by either one of these headquarters. So they're going to be busy guys. We're getting towards the end of the first turn, and this is actually the 2nd time the 1st Ukrainian has activated. Remember, we have 6 counters to put in. 4 of them are required to be 1 for each of the 4 front headquarters. We put in the reinforcements, and then we put in a 2nd one for the 1st Ukrainian, which is where we want to do our biggest push right now, because basically that's where the troops are. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and I'm going to do the move and see what kind of attacks we can put together here. So this one has the potential of being kind of nasty. We ran these guys over here, and this guy was able to walk through. And as a mech infantry, he's better on defense than armor, so I'm kind of okay with putting him out there by himself. He's got a 5-point defense. I can live with that. These 2 hexes are going across a minor river that halves them, but these guys are not, so they are at full strength. It comes out to a 4-1. And with a roll of 3 on 4-1, we have an R result, a retreat result. He got off kind of lucky on that one. So he goes back 1 hex. And the armor and such are going to go ahead and advance. And so we see the Soviet armor and infantry advance as much as they could. Not a lot of German strength over here, so I'm being a little less careful with putting only 1 guy in a hex, and it's kind of okay. There's 2 here, 1 here, 1 here, and the infantry back there who could only advance 1. All right, we got a 6-1 on the next guy, and he's now got to deal with enemy zones of control all around him. So it'd be most unfortunate if he had to retreat. 6-1. A 4 is a 1 RR. Well, I think I know what that means. So this guy, the 1, he flips over, he's reduced, and the double retreat, he has to walk through 1 zone of control or the other, and this guy is done. Advance the infantry. And I think that's, well, we could take the armor and do a double here, but this is a weak defending armor. Let's not do that. Don't need to push this. The Germans are kind of getting in trouble now, so let's just not do them any favors. The next guy, red die. So that is actually an 8-1, not a 2-1. So 8-1. Oops, a 1. Well, I'm glad it wasn't a 2-1. It was a double retreat. He got off extremely easy. Since he only had 1 step left, that was the only roll that would save the guy. Let's roam this way. We got to get some stuff over there because this is getting kind of nasty looking. All right, we have, well, let's stick the armor out here, leaving behind a tank unit and a guards infantry unit. That's fine. This guy's now surrounded with zones of control, and he's going to be really more interested in saving his skin than anything else. 4-1. Roll 4. Double retreat. Double retreat. Let's just head back. Armor in the advance. Could do a double advance, but I'm playing very conservative and very honest by and large. So, and we don't have, we're not exerting surrounding zones of control over any of these guys, but we do have a 3-to-1 here. Oh, excuse me, that's a 9-to-1. Okay. Well, we might have something better soon. 9-to-1 on that last guy. Jeez, a 1. But this is a 1 RR, and he is surrounded with zones of control, so he loses a step for the 1, and as soon as he does his retreat into a zone of control, there goes another step. This guy is gone. So there are now 3, 4, it looks like there's 5 dead German units so far. And we'll go ahead and let's advance the infantry and leave the armor behind. So we're going to advance the infantry. All right, so the infantry is advanced. The armor was left behind. So they are not encumbered by being in any zones of control. They will have full mobility next turn. Not enough concentration of force over here. We are going across the river at that point. So we're starting to flank the river. We're starting to thin this out pretty good. And the Germans are going to have to do something. And the 1st Panzer Army has been selected. And they are the guys that I've marked with the golden pill right here. That's the headquarters. I'll go ahead and mark out the units that can be activated. So, the 1st Panzer Army, that means that this swath of units over in here is active, as well as looks like this tank unit, which is it is the Das Reich division. They say one of the best divisions in the entire German army, is also falling within their radius. Problem is that this is one of those auto-loss cities. I really hate to pull that guy out of there, but we'll see. All right, the Germans are going to go ahead and do their move and see what they can come up with. The only Germans that moved out of all of this are this infantry unit moved over to here because he's going to walk into the city hex, which is temporarily vacant, and Das Reich was able to make it all the way over to here where the gap in the line was. And so we got them plus another 8-point Panzer division plus a little infantry division. All these German infantry divisions are probably half strength at best after the Kursk debacle, the Stalingrad debacle, all of that. So 5 points. So it's a Guards infantry division defending. We got 20 points attacking, no special terrain. This is the bridgehead. So the Germans have acted aggressively to try to seal up that bridgehead and push them back over the river. Alrighty, so it's a 4-to-1. And they get an RR, double retreat, and then they'll be able to advance and recapture that bridgehead. So this is pretty illustrative. Let's go over what the retreat options are here. All right, so he's got to do a double retreat. You cannot go across a major river unless in a retreat unless your unit starts next to the major river. So that means these 3 would be valid under that criteria. However, this is not a valid retreat hex under the next criteria. The next criteria is retreating across a major river hex side is not allowed if the hexes on each side of the river have enemy zones of control. And clearly this hex here has zones of control, so that rules out this hex. This hex is not ruled out because it is not an unbridged major river, it is a bridged major river. The bridge is between these 2 hex sides. So he could go there, but he would lose 1 step for retreating in the zone of control of an enemy unit. This is not bridged. However, there's no zones of control, and the rules say that if you have the option to retreat where there's no enemy zones of control, you have to go there. It's more important than anything, any other criteria. But this is unbridged. It's okay if he starts next to it. Well, he is starting next to it. So the only other question is, does this hex have any enemy zones of control? And it does not. So he could go here, but because of the zones of control, he won't. This will be the higher priority of the two. Because there's no enemy zones of control here, it is a legal retreat hex. He's going to go back 2 hexes, say, to here. And the German units will go ahead and advance. So at this point, the Germans have done a great job getting a sufficient force pulled together to counterattack this bridgehead and kick the Soviets back across the river once again. So this bridgehead is sealed with a very powerful unit sitting there. It won't be quite so easy to get across there next time. The Soviets will have to figure out what the heck they're going to do about that. Right? But they still have this kind of, it's not a breakthrough yet, but over here on the edge of the board where we did the double activation, it's still their best option for making some ground. Alrighty, the last chit, if you can see it, come on, is the 8th Army. And so the German 8th Army is located, it's the second one up from the board edge, right to here, and their span goes from that unit to that unit, but they also have enough to get to this Panzer division sitting here. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the move and see how much havoc these Germans can cause. So the Germans opted basically to pull back a little bit, keep their guys out of trouble. We yielded 1 hex row here. We stayed in contact with the Soviets. That's going to pretty much pin them down to this attack. They're not going to be shifting around very much. Of some importance, I think, is that we were able to swing an infantry unit out this way. Remember, German infantry has 5 movement points, so they get a chance to move around more than the Soviets do. Minor adjustment in the headquarters position. And I think that's it. No attacks. And the last chit has been done, and we have finished turn 1. At the end of turn 1, the Soviets have scored 6 victory points. They have killed 1 Panzer division, and they have also killed off 4 infantry-type divisions, totaling 6 points. Panzer divisions count for 2. The others count for 1. So, okay, that is Traces of War. And I do like it. It's a game that you can actually play in one extended setting. If you had somebody come over, say 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, you'd finish it up sometime that evening, assuming guys are playing at some kind of reasonable pace. And in this game, it's not that hard because so much of the time your units aren't moving. You know, when you've got units bucked up against each other, especially the Soviets, their infantry only has 4 movement points. It takes 2 to leave a Zok, 2 more to enter a Zok, and then cost of terrain. So they can't do any Zok to Zok moves. They just don't have the movement points. About all they can do is fall back. Their armor's a little better, but it's really the Germans who have some options here. If the front is static, like you're seeing in some parts of this line, that there's really not much to decide upon. It's very small adjustments, truing the line. Later on, when things get mobile, like it's happening by the first Ukrainian front, it might take a little longer, but really the game plays pretty quickly. There's very little air force. The Germans can get some air support. It's just very minimal. A couple of counters, pop them down and shifts the odds or something. There's no artillery in the game. It's all integrated in the units, so there's no messing around with that. It's just moving units using the pretty normal stuff. The most innovative thing in the game, I think, is the way that the chit pool system has been modified such that the Russians have to put all their chits in right away, and the Germans have choices when to put them in the cup and how to use the OKH counters as either as an interrupt or for the more strategic sorts of pursuits, like getting in reinforcements or picking up these strategic orders that originated from you-know-who. All right, so I think that's going to be enough for today. If you've watched this whole thing, I thank you oh so very much. If you're a subscriber, I thank you oh so very much. If you are new to the channel, have not subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and I'll continue to come up with ideas for ways to take the channel and interesting things for us to talk about. But for now, this is Paul, the Oka Knight, and I wish you all a pleasant evening.